In our increasingly electrified society, a resilient electric grid is more important than ever. ITC Midwest builds, operates, and maintains electric transmission infrastructure connecting consumers to lower-cost, renewable energy sources to power our energy future. That means safe, secure, reliable electricity for those we serve. ITC Midwest is ensuring the greater grid can meet our energy needs now and long into the future. Learn more at itcmidwest.com.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 2025 Iowa Ideas Conference. I'm Zack Kucharski. I'm the executive editor at the Gazette, and on behalf of the entire team at the Gazette, thank you for engaging with us and joining us this morning. This is our 9th year of Iowa Ideas, and we couldn't be more excited for the 55 sessions and the more than 200 panelists that you'll hear from over the next day and a half. I want to start with a couple quick thank yous. Thank you to our advisory councils. There are more than 90 people that we meet with throughout the year to help us understand the issues and the challenges and the opportunities that face the state. And so they come together and help us with the programming and the ideas behind this conference, and we thank them for their contributions to that. I also want to recognize all of our sponsors who make this conference possible and free. A big thanks to our presenting sponsor, ITC Midwest. And now I'm thrilled to welcome the first family of Iowa football, Mary and Kirk Ferentz. Coach Ferentz is in his 27th season as the Iowa football coach and recently broke Woody Hayes' record for Big Ten, for the winningest coach in Big Ten history a few years ago. And Mary Ferentz has been an advocate for many causes, including serving as the chair of the Stead Family Children's Hospital from 2006 to 2019. They've been married for 45 years and have 5 adult kids and 13 grandkids. And some of the art you can see in the space behind them there this morning. I want to welcome them and thanks to both of you for agreeing to do this. We're deeply appreciative. The conference theme this year is about driving Iowa forward, and in that is leadership and advocacy. And so at the risk of kind of starting with an essay question on a test, I want to ask both of you, what does it take to be a good leader? And what's your philosophy on leadership?
Yeah, that's an open-ended question for sure. And so I'll just start. I mean, it's really easy for what I do, I guess, because it's something I've always enjoyed. I've always enjoyed sports. So I've always enjoyed people. And, you know, if I wasn't coaching, I'd probably be teaching. I'm guessing that's what I'd be doing at my age now. That's how I got started out. I was a teacher and a coach, and then had an opportunity to focus primarily on just coaching at the college level. But long story short, I've taught and coached at the high school level. I've done it at a Big Ten university for 36 years total, two different times as assistant head coach, and then spent 6 years in the NFL as well. So I've been at all the levels, if you would, and throw in 3 years at Maine, which was a FCS back then. They called it 1AA, now an FCS program. So I've worked with athletes at all ages. And so it's easy for me because I do like football. I wasn't really good at football, but I loved it. I loved competing in it. And so there was a natural draw there. And I think then the bigger thing is what's made it easy for me. I enjoy working with people, especially young people. And I enjoyed teaching, but quite frankly, coaching is a little bit easier in that when I taught English, probably I'm guessing about 85% of the class was there because they had to be there, and maybe 15% were engaged. Football, you can flip that around. At least 85% are there because they want to be there. So it's a little easier to work with people that are already motivated towards that end. But, you know, I think it's all about basically, you know, what your purpose is. You know, do you believe in the purpose? And then the other part is just being engaged in it, and you know, given as much as of yourself as you can to help other people advance. And again, the world I live in is pretty easy because it's all about watching young people try to commit themselves to something and then hopefully work to get better over time. And that's basically how football works.
Mary, what do you think? What's a good leader to you?
Well, I think a good leader is the person who brings out the best in the people around him and makes everybody better.
Okay.
I've been a stay-at-home mom my whole, since we had our first child since 1983. I've been a stay-at-home mom, and I guess I've been more of a boss, a leader, and they can be one and the same, but they can be very different. I know Kirk has always teased me in all the years. He said if you ran the football program, everybody would quit.
Maybe 5% would stay. Maybe I don't know. We'll see.
I think that may be risky ice. I don't know that I want to ask a follow up. Why? I will, Kirk. What do you see in Mary as a leader?
It's kind of the same thing, and the most visible thing she's done in that regard. First of all, she did a wonderful job raising our kids. What I do is fairly time demanding, and so it's been a partnership for us. Whether I was coaching in high school or in the NFL, certainly here, and I do remember vividly when I interviewed for this job 27 years ago. I was getting ready to walk out of the house that morning in Baltimore, and I looked at her and just said, "Are you sure you're ready for this? Like, are you really open to this?" Because and I had not been a head coach at this level, but I just, I've never owned my own business. I envisioned there were probably a lot of parallels. My point to her was like, the phone calls are going to come to me now, the house. That was pre-cell phones. But, we're going to get calls at home over the weekend, et cetera. It's basically 24 hours a day. And I just wanted to make sure she was on board because she already had her hands full. We had 5 kids at that point, and that is the hardest and most demanding and I think most important job in the world is raising kids. So, there's been a partnership all the way through it. But, so she's done a great job with our family, which is certainly the most important thing to both of us. And then beyond that, she's been very supportive of my initiatives. And then thirdly, she didn't get drafted, but coerced maybe a little bit to get involved with the Children's Hospital. And, to watch her be fully engaged in that was really fun for me. And, but I think the commonality is it was something she believed very strongly in. And all you got to do is take a tour of the Children's Hospital, talk to great people, and you get sucked in real quickly. But she did, and she was very passionate about it and worked extremely hard at it, and with a lot of various people to, try to be helpful and maybe, creating the vision of a standalone children's hospital. So to watch her work, and I got to watch her, I go to different events and dinners, and it was fun for me because I was the tag along and, just sat at the table and maybe drank a couple beers when she had to give the talks and all that stuff. And it was just great, but she was very passionate about it.
He did enjoy that.
That's very nice.
But he did teach me one good thing is less is more. When you get talking, less is more, and I've never forgotten it. It's true.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, there are a lot of parallels there. It's interesting to me that you're sitting here together this morning. When you look at the Children's Hospital and the proximity to Kinnick, they're right next to each other. And for both of you to spend the time and advocate on behalf of the Children's Hospital, that's something that will last, generationally, way beyond today. And I'm curious, Mary, talk a little bit about advocacy and why, kind of your path through that, and why do you think it's important, and what got you to get in and go?
Well, I was reaching a point in my life, Zach. I had been a stay-at-home mom for, at that point in time, 2006, probably about 25 years. And our youngest child was going through high school. So I looked at, my role as that was my job. Mm-hmm. With, Kirk did his football and the rest was my job. And I saw that, kind of winding down, and our youngest son was going to graduate from high school in 2012. And I was just kind of struggling with, well, what am I going to do? I mean, my job is basically ending. So, what's the next step? And I think one of the things that we have the good fortune of that so many people in Kirk's business and families don't have is just being somewhere for so long. And what that has afforded us is, this is our home. This is our community. We're not just passing through. And we had lived here for 9 years back in the 80s, where our first 4 children were born. And then we were gone for 9 years and back. But it was always a really special place to us, because we were here. 9 years is a long time for a coach, for anybody, to be in one place. So it's always been a really special place. It's our home. It's home to our children. I think, Kirk, I'm always curious if somebody ever could find the answer to this. How many coaches can say that 5 of their kids graduated from the same high school, and that we actually have our youngest boy went to grades K through 12 here in Iowa City. And I would venture a guess there aren't many people in Kirk's profession who can make that claim. So we feel like we've been really fortunate. And being here so long, I mean, we're not passing through. This is our home. This is our children's home. And everything that happens here is important to us.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Kirk, I wanted to ask a little bit. You mentioned teaching and you mentioned coaching. And I would see that there are a lot of parallels, and maybe the engagement of, English class, maybe there's a little less engagement there. But I am curious, you're working with athletes at a formative time in life. They've worked hard to get to where they are, but it's not necessarily the final stop for some of them, or they're figuring out what they want to do professionally. What do you hope for the athletes that you coach, and how do you work to connect with them to kind of understand their goals and what they want to do?
Yeah, it's interesting. We talk a lot about, or there's a lot of talk about the guys that go on to the NFL, and pretty much every kid that plays college football, that's his dream. That's what he wants, and that's great. And we want to coach guys that want to play in the NFL. I always start with that, and we use it in recruiting. We've had guys that have had great success, but it's nowhere in our mantra, our material, all that stuff. There's nothing about, it's never been a program goal. Our first program goal is for a guy to get his degree. And that all starts there. That's why you go to college. And it's such a great opportunity. And I always tell kids, you may not use your degree, and you don't have to have a degree to be successful in life. That's certainly been established. But you have an opportunity to get one. There's absolutely no downside in education. The more you get, the better. So that's where it all starts with us. Our second program goal is to be a good citizen, which starts with being just a good citizen and not necessarily being noticed, but we try to encourage our guys to be more than that and be somebody that adds to the community. That's our number 2 goal. And then the third one is we want them to maximize their football experience. And you really can't do that unless you run the whole race. You can't earn your degree if you don't earn your degree. You've got to be here to finish, to maximize your career. Hopefully, you can start to finish, and it's all about the growth that you can exhibit. Not everybody's going to be an NFL player. That's not realistic. And I always tell our guys at the start of every year, everybody in the room has equal opportunity to graduate. Everybody should graduate, but not everybody's going to be an NFL player. So let's make sure we understand that, and then everybody can be a good citizen. So those are the 3 program goals that we have, and it's easy. There's nothing bad about any of those things, and it's all about the race that the players run individually. And that's the fun part about it, because you've got over 100 players, 100+ players, different backgrounds, different personalities, right down the list, and to watch them come together and work towards common goals is a lot of fun. But it all starts with those 3 things. So that's what we do it for. And when I coached in high school, it was all about advancing people forward, the young people you work with. And believe it or not, in the NFL, that's what I enjoyed. I mean, it's a business. It's a hard, cold business, really cold business. But the reality is, you just have to understand it, and the players need to understand it. We all need to understand you're working that. And my encouragement to my players is always, let's keep the business outside the room. Enjoy the purity of the game and the communal aspect of football, because that's what is fun. Whether you're 30 years old as a player or 18, it really doesn't change if you're doing it for the right reasons. And but the world's gotten a lot more complicated. So conveying and teaching those messages is a little trickier than it was maybe 35, 40 years ago. But it's all the same. It's all the same. And I would interject also when I talk to high school coaches at clinics and basically anybody to listen. There's a real level of responsibility that comes with that. because as a coach, you have an opportunity, you have a platform to be influential, and you need to keep that in mind. There's a high school coach, Bob Lattisaur, legendary coach out in California, started the De La Salle program in the Bay Area and built it to probably the most powerful team in the country 10, 15 years ago. I think they had a 172 game win streak. And I listened to him at a clinic one time, and his last point was, careful what you say, kids remember everything. And if you ever go to a wedding and, stand around the bar and listen to kids talk about things that, you might have said 20 years ago, and it's like, whoa. So there is a responsibility when you work with other people. And then obviously, I've never worked in the business community, but, anytime you're in charge of something, there's responsibility goes well beyond yourself. So I think, working with that and being cognizant of that and conveying that to the people you work with is critical. If you want an organization or a team to move forward, people have to know that you really do care about more than just what they're doing at their job or their, whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish.
I hear a lot of servant leader kind of themes here, and I would say that there are a lot of parallels just looking at the field and the leadership that's demonstrated there each week. Well, you may not have been a leader in a business. I see the exact same qualities exhibited there. I was curious a little bit about goals. You mentioned the program goals, but Kirk, when we hear from you each week, you also seem like you have kind of season goals for teams that you work with. But are you a goals guy? And how do you how often are you looking at those goals and reassessing?
Yeah, I'm smiling or smirking a little bit. Probably 50 years ago, I read a book by Lou Holtz. Maybe it was 40 years ago, but he had 37, and they were in the book. You can probably look them up. 37 career goals and all that stuff. I mean, I knew I was going to Connecticut. Literally, it was July 30th or 31st. I can't remember exactly, but that's when I knew I was going to the University of Connecticut. As a student, yes. I mean, most kids know well before that, a year at a time, or certainly by the end of by the time they graduate high school. So that might have been a window into my goal, my ability to set goals. And so I'm only chuckling a little bit because you referenced breaking Woody Hayes' mark. Truth be told, I never really wanted to be a head coach. That was not a career goal. And I'm not trying to minimize the record or be disrespectful in any way, but it was never something I've dreamt of doing. It just kind of happened. And quite frankly, my goals were pretty simplistic and still are. I just wanted to be the best line coach I could be. When I got going, when I found out that was what I was going to do, be an offensive line coach, which was 1980 and 81 when I came here as an assistant. And that's really what drove me. And then, to be the best line coach, what's that entail? And then things just kind of happened as a byproduct of, I guess. I never really went looking for a chance to coach in the NFL. It found me, and, it worked out well. And I felt hugely, inferior and intimidated when I went there. But if you stick with something, you find out there really aren't that many secrets to doing things. It's not that hard, and it's not that different than maybe what I have been doing. So anyway, I've never been good at that. And then circling back to be more specific about what you talked about, I live in a world where people are already evaluating us. I don't need anybody else. I don't need to be doing it because we have all kinds of experts evaluating us every minute. But the thing I try to convey to our team, it's not about that, and I really encourage them to block out outside noises, sometimes even family members, as well-meaning as they may be. But I think sports and I think life, it's about how well can you do at what you've chosen to focus on and concentrate on. And all that means to me is giving, making a commitment to doing it and doing it your absolute best, trying to find people that can really help you be better at it and listening to those people and then working with those people. And in our case, it's all pretty self-contained. And I always, judge players and judge seasons by, going back to that idea of maximizing a career. or for a team, we maximize our opportunities. And then football is really simple. We have the whole year mapped out, what we're doing. We have a intent plan for everything. But once we get in season, it's really simply each week, we turn over a new page on Sunday, Monday, and you learn from Saturday on Sunday. And then Monday you move forward, and it's all about how much can you do to be prepared for the next competition. And then, how well can you show up and compete and do it for 60 minutes or longer if it takes that. And I've always evaluated teams by what their commitment is and how well they run that race each and every week. And it's easier said than done. So, one of my favorite seasons, I'll cherry pick an easy one, was 08. We were 3-0 and went 3-3. We lost 3 straight games by like 9 points combined, 9 or 10 points. But that team their spirit never changed, and they just kept working, kept competing. We won 6 out of the next 7, and up to 20th in the country, had a big bowl win over South Carolina. So, that wasn't a championship season per se, but in my mind, that was a team that maximized everything they could have done. So in my memory, it's like one of the best ones I've ever worked with. And, the experts may not say it, they would point to a team with a better record, but I think success goes well beyond bottom lines or records. It's about, what you invested and what you gave. So, and then the experts can judge all the other stuff. That's their job. And what I do if we're not too accurate with our assessments, we end up getting fired, I guess. But I think it's what you choose to focus on that's important.
Mary, I wanted to ask a little bit. For several years, you led the Ladies Football Academy, and that was bringing in kind of new energy and just helping kind of expand the reach of the program. What did you see as the opportunity there? What led you on that path, and what were your takeaways there?
Yeah, well, the first Ladies Football Academy was in 2010, and I had started working with the Children's Hospital, I think like 2006. And at that point, the raising money for a new building, a freestanding building, was the big focus. So we were just looking at ways with the football platform, well, not necessarily with football platform, but what could we do to raise money? What could we do? And then just coming back, and we had explored a bunch of opportunities. I had a great group of women who I worked with, and we were just spitballing all kinds of ideas, and nothing really stuck. And then I just kind of threw out an idea to the group, like, have you guys ever heard of a women's football school? And immediately everybody was like, that's amazing. And of course, Iowa, that was not a unique idea. That Kirk was actually the one who threw the idea out at me. But a lot of places have been doing it. Professional sports teams do it, college sports teams. And then we just adapted it to our fan base. And why not? We have such great fans. And who better to advocate for children than women? And I just look at women as just, their capacity to, care and to love and get behind something. And, so it kind of just, we started it. We didn't know how it would go. We engaged all the players. I get asked all kinds of questions, about football. I'm always nagging Kirk, like, God, you work all the time. What are you doing over there? You work all the time. And it was actually a wonderful experience for me, because he would always say for years, decades, Mary, you have no idea what I do. And I really didn't so the Ladies Football Academy, it was a chance for women to kind of get behind the scenes and spend a day in the life of Hawkeye football. So it kind of just took off from there. Every year, just the trajectory was up. We did it. Our goal was 10 years. It took us 12 because we were interrupted by COVID years. But we ended up raising, and it was the women who participated who raised the money. And we ended up raising over $3 million for the Stead Family Children's Hospital. The first $1 million went to the building campaign. The second $1 million went to pediatric research. And the third $1 million went to child life specialists, an additional child life specialist. So we had so much fun. As a matter of fact, we kind of joke, who had more fun? the players had a great time. And one of the feedback that I got from the women year after year after year was these players are so nice, almost like they were surprised. And I was always like, why are you surprised? There's somebody's son, there's somebody's, father, husband, friend, I mean, they all have moms. So of course it was fun, for them. It was fun for the ladies who participated. It was fun for us who ran it. It was good. It was a win-win.
All right. I want to ask you, so we see plenty of video of Kirk on game days. Every move I think he makes from, leaving the hotel can seemingly end up on TV at some hour of the day. What is game day like for you? What do you do? Where are you doing it?
I know. Everybody, well, at the risk of making your show very boring, everybody thinks we live this crazy, glamorous, just fun-filled life. Game day for me is stress and work. Everybody's like, oh, come to my tailgate, we'll do this. I'm just like worried about the game. I have to say it's not always fun. I usually just, I have gone through many phases on game day, obviously with my children. They always had their activities on Saturday. If you could, I don't want to disappoint anybody, but I actually missed games, or we arrived at games late because of their activities. And Kirk and I always believed that, their activities were more important, than being at dad's work, so to speak. And then now that I'm not coming to the game with kids, it's I usually just go straight in and just like, please let everything go okay.
Are you calmer now?
I'm not a lot of fun, Zach. That's the short of it. I'm not a lot of fun on game day.
Well, what is it like after the game? I would guess that wins are good nights, and
it depends. Exactly. But wins are important, because that's, they work so hard. That's what you want to see. And, when things don't go your way, you're just, kind of just double checking that you're doing everything right. So wins are way better. Losses, I remind him, I'm the reminder of, number one, you're a professional, act like it. And number two, the sun comes up every day. The sun comes up in the morning, comes up every day. So it's a new day. And if you don't, and again, my motto is, although after 50 years of doing this, you really celebrate the good times. You celebrate them. For a long time, I was always like, you want to keep an even keel. You don't want to go, crazy because it's great, because you don't want to go too far into the dumps when it's not. And I just always felt like part of my job was maintaining the equilibrium in my house, because there are 7 of us.
I would imagine that's wild. And just even after kids' activities on a Saturday morning, even remembering that what time is the game could be a challenge.
Right. And so now I'm on time for all the games, but
She's occasionally reminded me that, half the teams win every Saturday and half lose. And, first of all, I already knew that. And then secondly, I get that totally. We just don't want to be in the half that loses, because it's no fun.
Right.
It's no fun.
I kind of want to tease a little bit. I don't know, even keel, we don't see many times, Kirk, where you're not even keeled in terms of all of the moments. You seem to be an optimist on the sideline. You seem to, even when something doesn't go according to plan, but also when you've won as much as you have, it also means you've probably lost a lot. What do you learn in losses? And what do you take from those when things maybe don't go your way?
Yeah, I appreciate nobody bringing it up, but I'm pretty sure I lead the Big Ten in losses too. So, because the one goes with the other. And
I won't ask the sports department to check that stat.
We'll have to check Woody Hayes'. I'm pretty sure he had far less than I did, but that's part of the game, and that's part of the risk, and we try to convey that to our players too. And anytime you put it out there and you go out and compete in public or anywhere, to Mary's point, half the teams are going to win and half lose. So there is risk there. But again, it circles back to what I talked about earlier. To me, it's all about the investment, and it's all about what you're doing. Are you giving yourself every possible chance to be successful? I do try to keep an even keel, at least outwardly. Thank God people can't read my minds, because they would be running for the exits. There are a lot of times where, it's just total chaos in my head, or, what are we doing? That type of thing. But it really doesn't serve any purpose for me to start being real emotional on the sideline. I don't think it helps the cause at all. So yeah, there's, it's tough when you lose. It really is. But it's part of competition. It's part of life. And I think it's part of growth. That's something I think everybody needs to understand. We try to educate our guys coming in the program early that you are going to fail, because we're going to put challenging things in front of you, just like winning in Kenneck is challenging. We'll put them in challenging situations, or, we do have high standards, I think, in the areas we talked about, citizenship and academics. And we expect guys to do that, because that's really what it takes. We're trying to teach them what it's going to take to be successful in life, whether it's as an employee or as a husband or as a father. I think anybody that's, lived to be 30 understands there's a lot of things in life a lot tougher than going out and competing in a football game. So, that's just part of what the training is. I think that's the beauty of the sport. If you play in the NFL, great, but every one of our guys can have an opportunity to do some of the things I just mentioned, that are bigger in life than playing football. So it just all goes together, and that's part of our responsibility, try to teach guys to handle adversity and setbacks and disappointments. If you don't want to have any of those, then don't try to do something that's hard, because it's, but that's a pretty boring life. And it's good for people to reach and try to grow and see if they can't be something a little bigger than they are already.
Mary, I wanted to ask a question. There was a moment a few weeks ago where you met Kirk in the tunnel, not on the field. And it came up in the post-game comments, never the field. The tunnel was why didn't you come onto the field? What was what goes through your head there?
Well, I have always felt this way. I'm just married to the guy. He's a football coach. I'm just married to the guy. I don't really have anything to do with, so I've never felt that that's where I belong. I've actually been down on the field probably 3 times plus 10, 3 times, because each of our 3 sons all played for Kirk. So senior day, and I will say this, it is an awesome place to be. The energy and the tension, it is really palatable. But those 3 times, and then Ladies Football Academy, we had a bunch of prizes for the top fundraisers, and they got to pick whatever prize they wanted. And obviously the first pick always picked, we had a game package, a VIP game package, which included pregame sideline passes. So, and you got to have a host when you're down there. So I hosted them when we were down there. So 10 times with the 10 Ladies Football Academy. And I've just never felt like it's my place. I kind of look at it as very sacred ground. It's, I watch Kirk. I know the coaches that he's coached with throughout his career, the players, and it's just there's such a bond, and they're in it together. They're the ones that do all the work and all the blood and the sweat, and that's their place. The locker room, I don't belong down there. I just have always felt that way, and I've never let our kids go down on the field either, mostly because it's dangerous down there. So, and of course, our kids have really rebelled against me. They sneak down whenever they can after a big win. And then they kind of taunt me afterwards, like, hey, guess where I was, But, no, I've just always treated it like that's his domain. That's him and the coaches and the players and, everyone in this building who make it happen. That's their moment. That's their place. And as far as the day I was down in the tunnel, yes, I had received a phone call from someone who I love and respect here in the building. I won't mention any names. He knows who he is. And he said, would have never occurred to Kirk or me, that was important the whole thing, we had anticipated that award for a long time. Everybody knew it was coming. Kirk had kept it at arm's length just because, he's focused on, taking care of business week in and week out. And it wasn't anything we thought of, but somebody called me, like I said, who I love and respect, and said, it'll mean you need to be down there. So I just said, okay. And I wasn't ready to go out on the field and catch him when he's coming off. Because he's got so many people, that want to talk to him. And they had with Anthony Heron, which was very cool. And it was just, anyway. And I had kind of teased him the whole time, like, what is the big deal? Like, this is what happens when you hang around forever. Like, yeah, you're going to have more wins. But then when I found out Woody Hayes, it took him 28 years. I'm like, way to go. You beat, Woody Hayes. And, but he did, Kirk is, he always said to me, he goes, yeah, well, I'm sure I have more losses too. But no, the field, it was fine to our two daughters were there and two of our grandchildren. And it turned out it was awesome. And I'm glad we were there. And the look on his face when he saw us, like he was just in shock. And I did tell him he has to win 206 more games for me to go down there again. But yeah, it was wonderful. It was wonderful. I was so glad I did it. But I still stand by it. I don't think that's my place. I'm just married guy.
Kirk was surprised to see her in the tunnel?
Yeah, that one got me, actually. Yeah, it caught me off guard totally. So it's to her point. I mean, she doesn't, she meets me in the car afterwards. Whenever I get done with all the gauntlet I go through, I'll text her and she'll be outside gate, whatever. And I jump in the car and we go home. That's what we do. So yeah, that was pretty special. It was a very special night.
I will tell you a little what was funny. So the players all come in. And when they all saw me, they kind of went over and they stopped. And then Kirk came in, and Kirk didn't see me because the camera guy was between me and Kirk. And then so all the players had kind of, gathered around us, and Kirk comes over and he gives me a smooch. And all the players were like, whoa, like it took us back to high school, like Kirk and Mary. I was waiting for him to break out in the KISSING song. It was so cute. Do you remember that? The way they reacted to just a kiss in the tunnel. It was cute. It was really cute.
Coach, one of the things that came out, and I think folks around the program have known this, but the relationship doesn't end when folks graduate. I was curious if you could talk a little bit about how do you stay in touch with, as the football family has grown so big through the years, what is it like to keep tabs on what folks are doing? How do you do that? I've heard you're a letter writer, a note writer maybe, but how do you keep up in everybody's lives, and why do you do that?
Yeah, it's really hard. I'll share a couple of things. One of my biggest shocks when my first head coaching job was the University of Maine, 1990. Yeah, I'll never forget the first time I stood in front of the entire team, just how awkward it felt because I'd been a career line coach. So typically in the rooms I had been in, I would have in college maybe 16, 18, 19 kids. That was my group. That's who I was responsible for. NFL, that number would shrink down to about 10 or 11. And so my point there is like my day-to-day was very intimate with a small group, and you get to really know guys and, kind of know the pressure points and all those types of things. So I'll never forget just being so horrified at Maine, like, I'm standing in front of these guys, and how do you connect with 100 plus people? That's a real challenge, and it remains a challenge. Yes, I've been a head coach now 30 years. You really have to work at it. You've got to find different ways. It's not like being a line coach where it's this same intimate group daily in a meeting room. So just little things. I'll go in the weight room. I read about Bill Parcells doing this, and you go in the weight room and be able to see kids without helmets on, and just try to spend time in there when they're in their training, and see, just say hello to them and just ask them a question outside of something football related. I schedule meetings with our team. I meet with every kid on our team individually in the spring. for anywhere 20 minutes to 30 minutes. Just, try to, again, delve way beyond football. Just, but you have to work at it. You just got to make it a concerted effort or a conscious effort to do it, and try to build little checkpoints into your schedule, and get out of your chair. And I think it's the same thing for a high school principal. You got to be out in the hallways, meeting students and getting to know them, and putting faces and names together, those types of things. I think it's true in any job. You just have to find the time to invest, and then you try to stay connected afterwards. But it is a challenge. And one cool thing about being here, basically we're the only place even close to this, but we've got whatever it is now, 47 straight years of 2 coaches, and I happen to be here for 9 of Coach Fry's 20. So the overlap is pretty strong, and so you just. And the good thing about sports, I think it's true in life too, though, if you really have a good relationship with people, you can go 10, 15, 20 years without seeing somebody, and then you see them, and it feels like you just saw them, 2 weeks ago. So at football, it has that communal aspect to it, which is pretty cool too. But you have to work at it, I guess, and just stay engaged a little bit. And then we also try to afford Ben Hanson's done a great job of affording opportunities for former players come back. But again, the stability here has made it easier for a guy who played here 15 years ago. He comes in and sees a lot of familiar faces. He sees Reese Morgan, Phil Parker. He sees people that were here when he played here. And Rita, my assistant's been here 51 years. She started work at age 6. But anyway, she's been here. So there's a lot of that in our building. And I think that's one of the cool things about working here. It's a really unique environment that way.
I'm curious, you mentioned we've seen a lot of changes to the game, and just the challenge of building a relationship. Has it changed? I mean, years ago, you would be building something for 4 or 5 years, and with some of the changes to the rules in the game, how do you connect as quickly or build that connection when maybe you get one season?
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's one of the things I don't like about where we're going. I think it's become a little bit more of a transactional enterprise. And that's one of the good things about college football. It used to be a guy would start, freshman and go to senior and graduate. So, and you hear a lot less discussion about education in college athletics, which is unfortunate because I'm all for revenue sharing. I'm all for it. I think, the money is growing, the players deserve it, but it's still a pretty good deal to be able to go to school for free, to graduate debt-free. I think most, a lot of people out there in the general population would agree with that. To have that head start and also have some great experiences, it's still a pretty good deal the way it was 10 years ago. But it's made it a bigger challenge, certainly. And I think beyond that, I think the bigger challenge is just in all the misguided goals that people have when they're in high school now, and parents have, because they just, everybody's focused on all the wrong things, They're focused on, hey, what's in it for me? What's his chances of being an NFL player, a Major League Baseball player, or whatever? You go to Little League games and hear all that, and it's like the reality is, hey, folks, I hate to burst your bubble, but the chances of your son playing in the major leagues, good luck. It's a really small number, and just like Will Leck went to Harvard Medical School, that's a pretty steep hill to climb. And it's amazing he was able to do that and achieve that, but people just don't realize sometimes how difficult things are. And it's great to have goals and visions like that, but it's also good to be realistic and realize there are a lot of good things that you can get that are very attainable if you'll invest in that type of thing. So trying to convey that message at the front end is a challenge. And then, it's something we just try to keep reinforcing when players are in the program. So you get them thinking at least about the things that are really going to be impactful in their life, and not just chasing things that are really a small percentage of be able to enjoy those types of things.
One of the questions that I wanted to ask both of you is there's a lot of noise, and you're kind of in a profession where whether people know how to critique or know what the job entails, how do you keep focused on mission when there is all of the noise and the distraction? How do you, if even, how do you instant job evaluations from thousands of people who have no idea what is going on? How do you how do you ignore that noise and just stay focused?
So it's kind of funny. We just we practiced a couple of times this week, or this is our bye week, and then last night had a team meeting, and that was my my wrap up message. You know, we're coming off a hard loss, a really tough loss. One of the better football games I've been involved with my entire career. It was a really hard fought game, and just wanted to make sure our kids our players are focused on the right things. And to that point, I'll go back 15, 20 years ago when I'd speak at clinics. I always told people that, you know, I grew up when I went to college, it was early 70s. So it was right at the tail end of, you know, we had civil rights, we had Vietnam. Yeah, the country was in a really interesting place in the late 60s, early 70s. And so, you know, I was 18 at that point. I can only imagine what it was like to coach or teach or be a parent in that time period. And my point there is, I think we've entered a time now which is equally challenging. Our country's an interesting place. Obviously, it seems like we're at an all-time level, high level of people screaming at each other. Not a lot of talking and listening going on. Just a lot of people screaming their opinions. And then you look at social media. I think that's impacted life more than anything the last 20 years, and most of it in a negative way. There's so many good things about it, but like the wave, that's how that all got born. It was on social media. But for all those good things, there's just so much damage being done by people that, like, anybody's can communicate now that has no idea what the hell they're talking about. So to answer your question, I keep trying to encourage our guys. It's all about the process, which I think is a highly overused word, just like culture. But there's a lot of truth in it. And gotten to know a couple SEALs. We've had a couple SEALs talk to our team, address it. And a guy named Chris Haggerty from Delaware a year ago, June, talked about results being such a distraction. And in football, it's so true. And, we all get hung up on the wins and losses. We all get hung up on the results at the end of the game. That's how we get evaluated. I get all that. But it's really not how you move forward. It's not how you progress. It's not how you grow and really build something. And so that's a really hard message to communicate. But I think to answer your question, Zach, I probably spend more time now in my role trying to, be proactive in terms of thinking about what are our guys hearing, what are they being exposed to, whether it's from their parents, the outside world, social media, and then trying to combat that and keep them focused on, hey, what is it we're doing? What are we trying to do? And who really counts in this equation? And really in life, I think it's true of all of us. Most of us have a handful of people we really care about, and we really care about their opinions. So, yeah, if they got something to say, then, by all rights, listen. And, but outside of that, like, who cares? One good thing about getting old is I don't care about a lot of things anymore. So, it's easy for me to do that, but it's harder when you're 18 or 20 or 22. We all get that, but life's a lot better if you just keep your focus on what you're trying to do and who you're doing it with and enjoying those parts. And we just talked about, relationships and stuff. Well, develop better relationships with your teammates. We're all here doing the same thing. And, all that kind of stuff. And there's so much. That's the beauty of sports. It's just, being able to put all that stuff outside the door, shutting the door, and, hey, let's go to work. Let's do something together here.
Yeah, I'll kind of tag along to that, Zach. Kirk and I are old enough. Kirk was in this business before ESPN was even ESPN. It started out, was it 1970?
Yeah.
I think it was 1978. We were just like we weren't even married then, but the men that I worked with, I remember they would go, oh my God, we can call this 1-800 number and get scores 24 hours a day. Any score. That was ESPN. So now it's just, everybody is, there's so many platforms and media things. And so it's the complete opposite. But going back to that, where, the biggest question I used to get was, what does your husband do full time? Now, there's no stone unturned. Every aspect of the game, coaches, totally exposed and analyzed. But, and just in keeping with what Kirk said, like our kids, would come home and, people would say things at school, the other kids, and mostly more with the boys and the girls, because boys talk sports. Girls at that point weren't talking sports like the boys did. But, they'd come home like, oh, Mom, everybody is, saying how Dad stinks and, he should be fired. And I would always start the conversation with, who's everybody? So, everybody usually translated into just a small number of people. And then along the lines that Kirk would ask his players, I would ask our kids, so who is that person? Is that anybody we care about and whose opinion we value? And they'd be like, no. I'm like, okay, so who cares? Everybody's got an opinion, and who cares? And furthermore, if you're going to go into school and beat your chest when we win, you're going to have to take your lumps when we lose. So that's part of it as well. And our youngest boy, who I always thought had the best perspective, because of course he was, he had 4 great teachers ahead of him, but he'd come home from school and say, yeah, the kids are, really ripping on dad. We really stunk, and the team laid an egg. And I would ask him, I'd say, well, what do you say when people say that to you? He goes, well, they weren't wrong. So, sometimes, some of that criticism is fair and honest. And it's just like, you just can't let it ruin your day and define you and your life.
I wanted to ask, Coach, you took over for a big personality with and maybe you had the privilege of knowing the personality, so it wasn't completely foreign to you. But how did you come in with the confidence and to be authentic and be yourself? And people sometimes get wrapped up in just wanting to continue other things or to be somebody that they're not. How did you come into that moment with a confidence to be authentic?
Yeah, a couple of things. I mean, my mentor is a guy named Joe Moore. College football fans would know the Joe Moore Award. It's given to the best line. It's the only award named after a group of people, not an individual. But anyway, he was my mentor, my high school coach my senior year. And then I worked with him in 1980. He's the guy that talked Coach Fry into hiring me, quite frankly. So, I pretty much had the job, unless I just screwed up the interview totally. I think I had it before I got here. But my point there is, like, Coach Moore and I couldn't be more opposite personality-wise. Very, very different people. But God, I learned so much from him. He was so good to me, invested in me. So fast forward, I worked with Coach Fry for 9 years, and he's everything I'm not. He's charismatic, entertaining. I mean, just the whole 9 yards. Very folksy, and just had unbelievable vision. I think he's the only person that could have revived this program the way he did. He and Bump Elliott really were a great team. So I guess if I learned something, during that little period, it was like I never tried to imitate Coach Moore because I couldn't. And same thing with Coach Fry. So I think you just have to come in with your be yourself. You've got to be genuine. I think that's true in anything you do in life, and then especially if you're in a leadership role. And, kids. I mean, high school kids and junior high kids will sniff out phoniness like that. I mean, that doesn't. I've always been amazed how many coaches think they're fooling people because you can't fool kids. I know that, and so that was kind of the start of it. And then the other thing was I was far enough in my career. 2 things that were critical. I think I knew there were certain things I just felt were non-negotiable. Just strictly, these are important building blocks. We have to start here. And then I was old enough where, I thought I had a good idea what those were. And then the other component, which helped me a little bit, that go back to that thing. I never was dreaming of being a head coach. I didn't really, it wasn't a good goal. So I just figured, I'm going to do what I believe. And if it's not good enough, I'll go back and be a line coach. I was perfectly happy doing that. And that's still my career goal, is to retire a line coach. I just can't find a head coach I'll work with anymore. There aren't many left. But, I thoroughly enjoyed that. So I didn't, it wasn't like, my life was going to be over if this didn't work. Now, that being said, I wanted it to work. I want to be clear about that. But I think that it helped me. We were 2-18 our first 20 games. So it was not going to be the end of the world if we didn't make it go. Fortunately, we were able to start getting some traction. But that's kind of where it all started, But you can't be something you aren't. That's never going to work over the long haul. You might fool somebody for a short period of time, but that's not the way to build something and sustain something. And I've always been, convinced of that.
I remember Kirk used to say, to Coach Fry's credit, he let Kirk take over and be the coach. He didn't, he didn't make his presence known and meddle, and he just kind of let Kirk, and he supported you, but he kind of stayed out of the picture.
Almost too much. So I tried to get him to talk to the team, and he for about 2 years he just wanted to give me my space, which I learned something from him. Whenever I step down, I'll do the same.
I'm curious, you've both said that you've stayed here because you fell in love with Iowa. And the audience question is, what do you like about Iowa? And what's keeping you, when you have the option to be anywhere, what keeps you proud to be an Iowan?
I tell recruits that all the time. I said, if you told me in 1981 that we were going to live in Iowa for 36 of our adult life years, I said, you're crazy. If you had told us we were going to have 5 kids, she would have said you're crazy. Especially after the first, and so it just, it's, but the message there is you just never know where life's going to take you. And I mean, this is the God's honest truth. When I found out I was going to come here and interview, I hung up the phone. First of all, where is Iowa? I thought Chicago was the end of civilization. We're Pittsburghers. And second question is, what would you do if you lived in Iowa? Like, what the hell would you do? And we found out. We ended up just falling in love with the place. And so it made it very easy to come back here. But it all starts with the people. I think you talk to anybody. It's interesting at the hospital across the street. There's so many people over there that work there that have been here. Same stories. They've been here in their 20s or 30s years. Came here to go be residents, or and then next thing you know, they got hooked, and the quality of life, all the things that are here. Certainly, it's not for the weather, but everything else is just outstanding.
It's definitely the people.
Yeah.
When we moved out here, a lot of our friends out east, they truly thought we were out here with covered wagons and Indians. And this is how I describe Iowa to our friends. You come to a 4-way stop back where we grew up and everywhere around. You come to a 4-way stop. Everybody is like gunning it to be the first one through. They're flipping you off. They're screaming. They're swearing. Here in Iowa, I tell people, you come to a 4-way stop. Everybody's like, you go. No, you go. No, you go. It's just that Iowa nice is very real. It's just a very real thing. And we did. And just, we've got kids on both coasts. I just got back from New Jersey. And I grew up that way, lived that way. I don't know how, I couldn't wait to get back home. Not because I miss my children, but it's so crowded. And every square inch is taken up. And everything's jam-packed and crowded. And everything's a line and traffic. And I feel like we have probably 3 to 4 extra hours a day just because we're not in traffic and lines and just dealing with the density, just the density. But it is the people. No question.
As a Chicago kid, I can understand. When I came out to school at Iowa, that first weekend, I was like, what have I done? But from there, there's no line, and it's fast forward 25 years, and it's now my if I'm headed on I-88, that's where I'll get the 4-way stop or the rude drivers. And then, okay, I'll just go back home.
Yeah, no, it's such a nice way of life, and Central Time is the best, if you ask me.
So, well, Coach Mary, I appreciate you taking time with us this morning. Thank you for what you're doing and for the way that you represent Iowa in what you do. That's truly important, and appreciate you taking the time and spending the precious hours with us for one of those. So thank you very much. For our audience, want you to stick around today for the panels throughout the day. The next keynote is tomorrow morning. Heather Gudenkoff, the author, will join me for that. During the break today, check out the virtual sponsor fair. You can talk one-on-one with the sponsors. And with that, it's time to jump to the first block of sessions. Thank you for joining us for Iowa Ideas 2025, and enjoy the morning.
Thanks, Zach.
Thank you very much.